Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hi, welcome to today's episode of All Things Policy. My name's Adya and I'm going to be your host for today. And I'm going to be in conversation with my colleague Anwesha about the online gaming bill in India. Anwesha manages our tech policy program and she also researches AI governance. Anwesha, over to you. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with me today.
Thank you so much, Adya. So just to sort of set the context of the sort of blanket ban that we've got now, essentially this new online gaming bill, it bans all real money online games, regardless of whether it's a game of skill or chance. This is quite a significant point given that in the past we have, and not just in India, but generally we have had this distinction between whether a game that involves real money is a game of skill or chance. Those of chance can be attributed to be gambling, but games of skill are the argument is that those should be allowed to, be a part of regular trade and business. And so the argument is that when you're banning games of skill which involve real money, that is it sort of goes against our constitutional values of having the right to do business and trade. So now, when we have this sort of blanket ban across all sorts of online gaming that involves real money, what's happened is, all platforms that offer or facilitate these games, even other platforms that advertise such games or companies, even that is banned. So that includes fantasy sports, poker, etc. Similar apps. On the other hand, games that are purely for entertainment, esports, educational games, etc., without which do not include any sort of monetary stakes, those are exempt from this ban and are even encouraged. And so the key argument here for this ban is that these sort of games lead to serious social, financial, psychological, and public health harms, such as addiction, financial ruin, and also security threats such as money laundering and tax evasion. And so, in order to tackle these harms, the government has come up with the blanket ban. And yeah, so that's sort of an overview of what the ban does. It will for enforcement has resulted in possible jail time, fines, all these sort of enforcement tactics. But obviously, the cons of such a ban are quite high, as is the case with any sort of outright prohibition on things that are that cause social financial harms, such as even substances like alcohol. And so, a lot of the argument against this bill is that the unintended consequences of it would be severe and the positive outcomes may not match up to be as significant as the harms.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Now I understand at least what the argument behind the ban is. But what I've been trying to understand is what the impacts are going to be, and I'm pretty sure the impacts would be quite widespread. Do you have an understanding of how it's impacting the gaming industry, especially developers and startups?
Yeah. So in India, the online gaming sector has been growing quite significantly. It was expected to grow over twice the current valuation to about $9.1 billion by 2029. And this is largely dominated by real money games. So about 85% of the FDI that comes in through the sector is due to the real money games. And India is also home to a large percentage of global gamers. So the number is around 591 million gamers, which accounts to amounts to about 20% of the total global gamers. And it also employs around 1.3 lakh high skilled professionals. And there are around 1,900 to 2,000 gaming companies within India. This includes the larger companies such as Dream 11, but also includes up and coming startups. And every year, the sector has registered about a 10% year on year growth. And also, as a result of this ban, companies have written to the Prime Minister and the Home Minister and have estimated indirect and direct revenue loss to be close to 20,000 crores. It's quite significant. Within Karnataka specifically, the sector is set to, funnel about 7,000 crore rupees of annual, taxes, investments, and revenue. This includes advertising, data centers, sponsorship, cybersecurity, and all of these are critical parts of India's digital and creative economy. So, by enforcing this blanket ban, all of those investments and revenues sort of now are, we're not sure what would happen, but it is going to lead to a huge loss. And major operators in the country, as I said, Dream 11, but it also includes My 11 Circle, Winzo. There's also Nazara Technologies, which backs a poker based game. And so major operators find they will find ways to survive, but this significantly hampers startups and smaller firms. So immediately after this bill was passed, many have been forced to shut down or relocate. Investor confidence has collapsed, and this industry is what one would call a sunrise industry in India. And given the huge amounts of investment that it was bringing in, revenue it was generating, all of that now is uncertain. And you know, as with any other ban, this increases the possibilities of such real money gaming to move to unregulated offshore sites. And so, as a result, what has happened is rather than having some form of control over the industry, now the government sort of uses all sense of control over the industry. I mean, as a result of the ban, you're not able to regulate the online real money gaming. You're unable to provide user safeguards, and so people who were users who were playing real money games will now just move to more risky platforms to continue real money gaming. And so that also then fails to address the the social harms, the national security harms, and the things such as fraud, addiction, money laundering, etc. Those risks still remain. It just moves to a far more dangerous platform, and now there is no sense of control over those areas.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about what these companies are doing, considering the fact that they pretty much be out of business if they focus on the games that they were facilitating before? And what utility is there to the kind of educational or recreational games that they might be pushing for now? Is there a market for those kinds of games?
Right. So immediately after the ban was passed, obviously all rate money clearing has been seized. All such operations have been seized. Some significant developments have been that Dream 11 and BCCI they had a partnership. Dream 11 was one of the largest sponsors of the Indian cricket team, and now that doesn't exist anymore. That partnership has also ended. Apart from that, one of the platforms called A23, they filed a petition before the Karnataka High Court, arguing that this particular law criminalizes the legitimate business of playing online games or skill. And such sort of a law is paternalistic and unconstitutional. So, like I mentioned, it infringes upon the constitutional right to business and trade. So, but I mean, obviously, this petition has just recently been heard, I think about a week ago, August 30th. And we are yet to hear the outcome of this. If the High Court supports the petition, then that would eventually perhaps lead to this ban being reconsidered. But in case it isn't, in case they go ahead with the ban, then that would result in, I mean, it would further harm, investor relations. It would harm, especially investments coming into such sunrise industries, those which are new, innovative, unconventional. Those sort of sectors will be at a higher risk in terms of investments coming in. Apart from that, you know, people will find ways through VPNs and foreign payment gateways to circumvent this bill, or rather the ban. And now again, there is no possibility of monitoring or having any sort of oversight on such a enforcement from the government side includes strict penalties. It includes jail time, arrest without warrant, and the liability is on not just the platforms but also financial institutions, which process transactions that are related to real estate.
Okay, like you've already explained a little bit, there's a lot of challenges that come with the enforcement because even if there's things like jail time, things that the gateways and platforms have to abide with, people can just access these platforms abroad using tools like VPNs, right? So, do you think that this could create like a black market for online gaming, which could be even more dangerous for users?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, there probably already exists a black market for such real money gaming. And now this is just an opportunity for it to thrive. Also to sort of expand upon, whether educational or other non-real money games will, have a significant market. I think, yes, it does. I mean, kids love to play games on their phones. And so that I think is a market that they will try to tap into. A as in the existing online gaming platforms, which now have faced, I think some companies have faced about 90 to 95% revenue loss. So they will try to make up for it by pushing more games targeted at younger audiences. And that comes with its own set of risks, given that, younger people may not have the financial access to even participate in real money gaming, but they do enjoy gaming. So then this might lead to more, like a significant higher investment in creating games for children. And given the sort of lack of oversight or, also the encouragement as a result of this ban to create such games, it might lead to other problems which are of, children being far more addicted to online gaming and sort of create unintended consequences in that sense as well. And outside of that one sort of set of unintended consequences, the other would be the significant growth in the black market. And that just goes to say that extreme bills, extreme acts, which completely prohibit any such either good or service that is said to create social harm, uh, they always backfire. And since the ban is significant, the consequences of it will also be the same. And so, in order to get to some sort of a positive goal, instead, what will happen is a lot of the negatives will now be exacerbated as a result of the ban. Uh, and yeah, I think there were other ways to go about this particular policy, given their core agenda being, reducing fraud, addiction, and protecting from money laundering. There were other alternatives which could have been considered, but instead, going ahead with the ban, it's sort of not even going to meet those very basic sort of agenda.
Okay, thank you. And now that I think about it, if one of the major agendas is to reduce fraud and money laundering, then children who these educational games are going to be targeted at are hardly the audience that's engaging in those activities. A lot of the time, they don't have the financial means or the wherewithal to engage in bigger financial scams, frauds, all of that. Come to think of it, if the targeted demographic for this ban then is older individuals who have more disposable income and all of that, if people are addicted, like there's informal offline platforms as well for gambling, right? And even though you ban them in India, it's I think an open secret that these places are very easily accessible. So I'm very skeptical about the effectiveness of the policy itself. Are there any alternative solutions you think that have been implemented which could better regulate online gaming? Because here I have multiple skepticism.
Yeah, I think, and also what you're saying is similar to what a lot of the folks within the gaming industry and the policy sort of, ecosystem have been saying as well, is that if you treat each of these core issues, say that of addiction or of fraud, as a separate issue in itself, and not, merge that with the issue of online real money gaming, then we already have certain policy alternatives, whether in India or outside, that do deal with these issues. So, for example, if we talk about the issue of social harm, which is addiction or other such risks of using all your money to gambling, those sort of things, they can be regulated in other ways. You can set up treatment centers. You can tackle these issues on a case by case basis rather than having a blanket ban. And that would also require, more social awareness of the pitfalls of such, form of gambling, etc. And regardless of that, if there were to be a ban, the distinction between a game of skill and a game of chance is still quite important. And so while there is an argument to be made on in support of banning games of skill, I mean that too would lead to the same problems of a thriving black market. And so instead of having a ban, which should be in any scenario the last sort of alternative that you go to, uh, one good option would be to tackling each of these social harms as a social problem and not as a technology problem, which is an error that is continuously made across different sorts of policies and tech policies. So when it is a social problem, you need to have social solutions. You need to have, given that India is largely a community-based society, having things such as treatment centers or self-help groups for, dealing with addiction, any form of addiction. I think those are more welcome moves rather than just banning the platform itself. On the other hand, if we talk about crimes that result from some form of real money gaming online. These are crimes that are anyway crimes. You have money laundering, you have fraud. Um, those are established to be crimes, and there are certain procedures for dealing with them separately. So instead of again, combining all of that under online real money gaming and pitfalls of specific to online real money gaming, you're assuming that any form of such gaming would lead to fraud or addiction, which may not be the case. I mean, it definitely isn't the case. So you deal with those crimes as a crime in the way in which we already have procedures set up. You already have punishments, etc., for indulging in such, sort of criminal behavior. And so it doesn't really need an additional sort of ban. What it needs is better enforcement of those specific laws, or better sort of a better track record of dealing with fraud and dealing with money laundering in the sort of regular, already formalized way. And yeah, I mean, so those are some of the policy alternatives. But when you also look at the online real money gaming industry itself, rather than again having a ban, what has been argued for is having sort of regulated licensing, age verification, deposit limits, spending caps. So there are ways to regulate the space, which would have been, a much more welcome move, given that it would make it easier for even startups to comply without, just completely shutting down operations. It would have also made it easier for bigger companies to comply with such, step by step sort of regulations. And there are examples, across India, or sorry, across globally, that where countries have dealt with games of chance and how they regulate it. And so there are lessons to be learned from that. Another sort of interesting point is that so far, like before the ban, the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, and overall, like the, union government and state governments have been in support for online gaming. And since 2023, there was a more light touch regulatory framework for online gaming. And this worked with self-regulatory bodies rather than, enforcing prohibitions. And that, I think, was far more welcome and easier to comply with, and also, supports the users, uh, and, overall was far more effective than the ban. And it's kind of confusing as to why, all of a sudden this ban has sort of come in, given that earlier, for example, Startup India had hosted a game development challenge. It had both hosted hackathons to, showcase innovation. And the gaming industry has been positioned as has been positioned as a significant part of India's, broader innovation economy. So it's a bit confusing as to why, all of a sudden we have this ban now, which completely sort of has resulted in some form of shutdown of this industry.
Okay. I was actually going to wrap up the conversation with a question along the same lines, because when reading up, I found the same thing confusing as well. And now that the government's talking about promoting esports and other forms of gaming and all of that, is that really being implemented in an effective manner? And do you think that's enough to offset the negative impacts of the ban? Because the sense I'm getting is that the problems that the government's identified and tried to address with this ban are very real. And I think very critical to address, but I'm not sure if they've managed to address it in an effective way that won't have like a domino effect of implications that they haven't really thought of how to address yet.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And, given that the ban also came about without stakeholder consultations or any form of sort of dialogue with the broader ecosystem, whether that's gaming companies or, policy analysts or other players in this ecosystem. It just goes to show that eventually we're going to see these unintended consequences play out in a big way unless, interventions are made to roll back this ban. As of now, I don't think we see any of the positives sort of playing out in a significant way, given that uh, I mean, people who are addicted will continue to be addicted. Fraud and money laundering will continue to be an issue that can be tackled in different ways. And they are not specific to real money gaming. And so I think, you know, I suppose as some sort of a prediction in the future, we might see the ban being rolled back, given that there has been a lot of backlash as a result of this ban. And, again, just having a regulatory body to, mandate strong KYC norms, or, implementing of the other alternatives that I mentioned earlier, I think that would be sufficient to tackle most of the harms. And it would actually do it better than in the way that it is being done now. You'd have better security protocols, you would have better user protection. On the social front, you would also have better, outlets for people to access in case, they have been dealing with such, addiction or other sort of impacts of such real money gaming. So there are other ways to go about it, but I think overall, such a ban will not help offset any of the harms that it has set out to do. And yeah, I think we'll see how it goes in the coming weeks. I think the petition by A23 has been heard, and so we can expect the verdict to come out sometime soon. And then yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Thank you so much, Anwesha, and thank you to those of you who listened along in our conversation. Hopefully, if the ban does come into act in some form or the other, they'll take inputs from the industry, from stakeholders, from policymakers, so that it's implemented in a way that's actually more effective without having so many repercussions that could affect many, many sectors. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs Check us out at our Twitter handle at Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.